Greetings from EA Sports in Orlando, Florida, where, yes, I have played the game. Not as mind-blowing, earth-shattering as last year when it was the first time I'd gotten to play the game in a long, long time because the game had gone away for 11 years. But EA Sports College Football 26, lots of improvements over the one that brought the game back. And the one that brought the game back was pretty awesome, but a lot more with this one. Some stuff that we've been asking for, some stuff that we didn't even know we wanted. But I'm going to take you through some of the things that I saw playing the game today. Had a lot of fun conversations with the folks who designed the game. And trust me, we're barely scratching the surface with what these guys can do. This is going to be a lot of fun over the next few years. But let's get to what we're going to get in the game in July when it ships. And I think I'll go back to last year. When I first got to play the game last year, same event, first thing I did, I booked a game at Lane Stadium. I wanted to see in Blacksburg what happens when the Hokies come out of the tunnel, where they're going to play Enter Sandman. They didn't. And I remember talking to Ben Howmiller, who's the principal designer of the game, and I said, what, no Enter Sandman? He's like, licensing a Metallica song is expensive, Andy. We're not sure exactly how many of these things we can do in terms of getting the songs. So they had Mo Bamba, they had Sandstorm. But this time, first chance I got, Lane Stadium, I heard the guitars. I heard James Hetfield. You hear the crowd singing it as the Hokies are in the tunnel. It's exactly what you'd hope it would be. Exactly what you'd hope it would be. And it's not the only thing that's new in terms of just the immersive, you're at the game factor, which I think is probably the most impressive thing about this game, is it makes you feel like you're actually at the game. So, as you know, if you watch the show, I grew up a South Carolina fan. My first in-person college football game was at Williams-Brice Stadium. So, very partial to the South Carolina band playing the theme from 2001 as the Gamecocks take the field. Well, last year, they just played Sandstorm. And obviously, we know that the Gamecocks love Sandstorm, but that's not how they take the field. This year, dun, 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 and the Gamecocks come out. And then as you're about to kick off, Sandstorm kicks in. It is amazing. And they've just got more of those little touches. For example, if you're playing a game at the Big House, between the third and fourth quarters, they're playing Mr. Brightside. And by the end of it, it's just the crowd singing Mr. Brightside. And it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. It makes you feel like you're there. And it's one of those things that really just hits you as a college football fan, that the people who make this game love it as much as we do. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that they've been trying to do that. And really, when you dig down deep into this, I was talking to Anthony, who does the playbooks for the game. And he's telling me about all the different Zoom calls he's been on with defensive coordinators about how they resolve conflicts, when they're playing against RPOs. And this is stuff that I don't even know that 90% of the people playing the game are going to notice. They're maybe not notice the run fits and how the defensive linemen interact with the offensive linemen, how the linebackers fill certain gaps. But they've taken a lot of time to do this. There's a formation that Penn State runs, that gate formation where they bring the left guard and the left tackle out wide. They had to change their rules for it because the game sees players out wide and thinks, oh, those are eligible receivers. But then they had to put in the eligible number designation outside the tackle box so that those guys wouldn't run routes. And they would do exactly what Penn State's offensive linemen do in that situation. I'll just say I did Drew Aller a little dirty while I was playing as Penn State. We were at Ole Miss, and I might have run every play out of that gate formation. I don't think the Rebels were fooled. So the two interceptions Drew Aller threw, not on him, totally on me. Virtual Drew Aller, I'm sorry. But that's the kind of cool stuff that you can expect this year. And also, they got coaches in the game this year. That's one thing that was missing. Remember, I talked to Lane Kiffin last year, and he said, I'd love to be in the game. I would do it for free. It'd be great for recruiting. Well, Lane Kiffin is in the game this year. Now, I'm not sure it's exactly Lane Kiffin. I think Lane, well, I just saw Lane this week in Destin. He's a little sunburned. He's been fishing, but I don't know that they quite captured Lane perfectly, but it is Lane. Now, coaches they did capture perfectly. Steve Sarkisian looks identical to the real Steve Sarkisian. James Franklin at Penn State, identical to the real James Franklin. Manny Diaz at Duke, excellent likeness. But here's the thing. It's not just head coaches. And they're not all in the game. I did go to North Carolina to see if Bill Belichick was in there. Did not see him. Now, I don't know if all of them are in there yet, but did not see Bill Belichick. But it's not just coaches. They have over 300 coaches in this game, so it's not all the head coaches only. They also have coordinators. Like, for example, if you're playing as Penn State, Andy Kotelnicki is your offensive coordinator, Jim Knowles is your defensive coordinator. And where you see this more is in dynasty mode, where you can either make your own coach, you can make yourself the coach, but you could also say, I'm going to be James Franklin. Or you could say, I'm going to start as Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator at Penn State, and see where your career goes from there. I think that was one of the most fun things is they showed us a little bit of what it's going to look like. And, you can see these coaches that kind of move around and imagine where guys would go. There's one instance where Jason Candle winds up the Iowa coach, the Toledo coach, Jason Candle. Now, I think actually if Kirk Ferentz retired this year, Jason Candle would be a perfect replacement for Kirk Ferentz. So it's a lot of fun to imagine this stuff, and you can really put yourself in the world. They've tried really hard to make a lot of those modes customizable, but we'll do a lot more on the different modes, on the road to glory, on the dynasty mode, on the road. Those are going to be as the time between now and the game release goes on. We're gonna get into that in June, because right now I know you probably, what's it like to play the game? So what's the actual gameplay itself when you're on the sticks, you're playing against somebody else? It's a lot of fun still. It's a lot of fun. There are a couple changes that they brought in. I actually think it's quite a bit easier to play defense now. They brought in the physics-based tackling that they introduced for Madden last year, which I think is better than last year's version of the college football game, and obviously much better than the early versions of the college football game where the defenders really could just go chase the ball. The tackling was not necessarily representative of what it's like in real life. I think it's a lot more representative of real life now. They try to get the players essentially to obey the laws of physics. So if you hit a guy hard up top, then you might bounce off him. If you hit him, in the middle, in the midsection, you might wrap up and drive him down. Also, conversely, when you're running the ball, you can run through tackles a little better now. And it feels like that physics-based tackling kind of cuts both ways. But I did feel more in control when I was on defense trying to get a guy on the ground. Another thing they've done, which is for the people like me who, you have to decide who you want to control when you're playing on defense. A lot of people will take somebody in the secondary. A lot of people take a linebacker. I've always been someone who will take an edge rusher or a D tackle. So they have a defensive lineman steering function now where you can use that left stick if you're a defensive lineman and you're engaged with an offensive lineman. Now, you got to be good enough to do it as the defensive lineman. It's not necessarily good enough as the player, but you need to have a very good defensive lineman. Like when I was playing as Mateo Uiagalelei from Oregon, it was much easier than when I was playing as someone who isn't necessarily as highly rated. And you can kind of steer the offensive lineman the way you want him to go, not just in a pass rush situation, but also in the run game. So it's a lot more fun when you're a guy who likes to play as a defensive lineman. So I thought that was fantastic. I thought that was a great addition to the game. I know you want ratings for players. They're not finalized yet. So I don't want to give you ratings that might not wind up being the actual rating when they come out. But I will tell you about a few guys, because I played as some of these guys, wound up playing against some of these guys. Took Arch Manning to Georgia. Took Arch Manning, the Texas Longhorns, to Sanford Stadium, played between the hedges. And they did make Arch Manning pretty good. And they gave him some star attributes. But he is not immune to stadium pulse. It's not the same as when you say bring a freshman like Bryce Underwood in there, but he's still not immune to it. So Georgia, obviously one of the toughest places to play in the country, you're getting very squiggly lines when you look at the routes. You're getting situations where you might not see what buttons correspond to what route. You're getting calling audibles and then the question mark and nobody heard you. You're getting all of that when you're on the road with a quarterback who's a little bit less experienced. Now, also played as Cade Klubnik from Clemson. They've made Cade Klubnik very aware, very smart, and that's probably accurate for a guy who is a senior, who is entering his third full year as the starter, who's played in a ton of tough environments and played in a ton of big games. That is what you'd expect. But he's a fun one to play as. Now, I will say, another guy I was very impressed by on Clemson, Purdue transfer Will Helt, the defensive end. Couple Purdue transfers just blew me away today. Now, we'll see if they wind up doing this in real life. But Ari and I have talked about them on Andy Ari On3 about what they can do on the actual football field. Their virtual versions are fantastic. So Will Helt, one of those guys where he was getting a great push. And then, of course, he's next to Peter Woods, who's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the country. And Peter Woods was just annihilating the Michigan offensive line when I had Clemson playing against Michigan in Death Valley. Of course, we got to see that incredible entrance where the Clemson players get off the bus. They go down the hill. You actually have Dabo leading them down the hill in this particular case because you didn't have that before. Now you have the coach. But that was a lot of fun. Bryce Underwood, I took him into two tough road environments. So I was playing as Clemson against another person who was playing as Michigan when Underwood was the QB on the road. He struggled a bit. They did not make it easy for him to succeed, but you could see they made him very athletic. And when he can get loose and when he has some time, he's got an arm. I also took Bryce Underwood. I played as Michigan, took them to the Horseshoe. I decided to make it snow. Script, Ohio in the snow is the first image you see. It's beautiful. And then that game was so much fun. I mentioned two Purdue transfers. I said Will Helt from Clemson. The other Purdue transfer I want to mention is Max Clare, the tight end who's at Ohio State now. Because, listen, I did okay with Bryce Underwood and company, and Michigan has a very good defense. But I was trying so hard to stop Jeremiah Smith, and Max Clare ate me alive. Now, we've heard good things about the actual Max Clare in Columbus. If he's half as good as virtual Max Clare, look out. Mackey Award winner might be in his future. So that was a lot of fun. It's great to kind of put the new face with the new team. Obviously, we like to play a game called Whose Team Is It Anyway on the show. Oftentimes, not very easy to remember where everybody is. I bet after a few weeks of playing the game, you'll have a very good memory of which guys wound up on which team. Speaking of transfers, Joey Aguilar, I'm sure you were wondering, Tennessee fans, the guy who went from Appalachian State to UCLA and then left UCLA when Nico Iamaleava went from Tennessee to UCLA, probably wondering who's starting for Tennessee. Is it Joey Aguilar? Is it Jake Merkslinger? I know his name's Merklinger, but I prefer to call him Merkslinger. It is Joey Aguilar. It is the transfer. And I took him to Tuscaloosa in the rain. And you know what? He held his own. He did all right. My defense struggled a bit against Ryan Williams and Isaiah Horton and company, but I thought Joey did okay considering the level of talent on Alabama's defense. So that was a lot of fun, getting to see all the new faces in the new places. But this game, I think you're going to find it very familiar if you played a lot of the game last year. The deeper modes, like I said, we'll get into those a little more. I think they've done some things that will make those easier to play and easier to play for longer, where if you're playing in dynasty mode, they have some stuff that will make it where you're going to enjoy playing it longer rather than feel like you're getting into a kind of a monotonous pace, which sometimes you could in dynasty mode. But just in terms of the little details, so I have to find this in my notes. It's fascinating exactly how much work was done on stuff that I honestly probably didn't even think about it. But you had the memes of the fans because they'd have those cutaway shots of the fans, and there wouldn't be that many different fans. Well, they did an incredible job fixing that. So 1,700 new heads for the crowd and the cheerleaders, 200 new characters total. So there is a lot more variety in those shots. And I think that's something, if you played a ton of the game, you probably got so used to seeing it, and it became a little bit of a running joke. Now there's a lot more variety. And again, you have those little moments like when you're playing at Michigan between the third and the fourth quarters and Mr. Brightside kicks in. It's awesome. And I'm sure at a certain point you're going to have played it a bunch of times and you're like, okay, I'm going to go through this. But it's so cool. And they've got 136 FBS teams. Welcome Delaware, by the way. And the attention to detail is very, very good. And it's one of those things where they paid attention when fan bases said, hey, this isn't exactly how it looks. This is what it is. South Carolina, I mentioned, they didn't have the theme from 2001. That's a song that apparently they were telling me just came in. So they just got that into the game. But I remember last year they said, they've got the fans waving black towels, the fans wave white towels. Well, now they're waving white towels. And it's just that they are trying to make it feel like you are at that game. And so far, they are doing it. And I think having the coaches helps too, because, in the NFL, the coach is not as big of a deal as the players. Every once in a while, you have the iconic guys, Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, but it's not as big of a deal. In college, the coaches are the biggest characters in the game. And so to be able to see Sark sending Arch Manning onto the field, or to be able to see a cutaway shot of James Franklin on the sideline after the stupid offensive coordinator, who isn't real Andy Kotelnicki, but is actually Andy Staples, who's running the gate formation every play and not fooling Ole Miss, to see him frustrated because a couple interceptions, it's pretty awesome. It feels even more like the actual game. And so very impressed with the thought and the care that they put into it. Very excited to get a chance to play it for longer. It's one of the things when you only get to play it for a few hours, you're just jumping from stadium to stadium, trying to see, okay, I need to see what this guy plays like. I need to see what this stadium looks like. And I tried to get as many as I could in. On Monday's show, you'll hear from Ryan Williams, who's on the cover. Alabama receiver Ryan Williams. A funny situation in my Tennessee-Alabama game where I did deny Ryan Williams a touchdown catch, but mostly because I had him double covered and I tackled him in the end zone and they did not throw a flag. So I am very pleased with my defensive effort there because, I really got beat and should not have been able to do that. But hey, sometimes things happen. Things happen in college football. Things happen in virtual college football. But I just can't wait to get the game and then to just – I'm one of those people who loves the entrances themselves. And those are changing a bit because there's a different big game entrance than a regular game entrance. And also one of the things they've done, which I find fascinating, like when you're playing a season, the lighting will change based on the actual time and place. So 6:00 in November in Eugene, Oregon looks different than 6:00 in November in Boston. And so you'll get sunsets at various times. And it's just, they showed us what some of the sunset animations look like. Just awesome. Can't wait to see the Rose Bowl, third quarter Rose Bowl. Very, very excited to see that. This is the stuff that we nerd out about. And this is the stuff that the people who make the game also nerd out about. And I'm glad they do. I'm glad they do. So cannot wait to see the full version of the game. Cannot wait to see what everybody's rated. This is going to be another fun summer because, look, we still have a while till the actual games start. It is not until late August that we're going to get that week 0 Farmageddon game in Dublin. By the way, they do not have Aviva Stadium in Dublin yet. One of the few stadiums they don't have. They have almost everything else. They did not recreate the lacrosse stadium that Northwestern's been using on Lake Michigan. They're going to put new Ryan Field into the game next year. It's still old Ryan Field for now, but they've loaded this thing down, loaded it down. So July, we're going to get about a month and a half solid of playing this game before the actual games come to help us end our national nightmare of the offseason. But this game is going to get us to the finish line, because I guarantee you we're all going to be playing it a bunch. We're going to be talking about it a bunch. My co-host Ari Wasserman, when you click on the game one night and you put your headset on, the voice coming on the other end, it very well may be Ari. Could be me. Could be my son. Probably I'm not going to be on the headset because I'll be getting my ass kicked by my son. That's the problem when you're an old man and you have a 15-year-old who plays video games constantly. But I am going to be better this time. I'm going to master that gate formation at Penn State. I'm not going to run it every play anymore. I will sprinkle it in sparingly, only when I need to fool the defense. But hey, I had to try it today because it's there, along with just about everything else in college football, including coaches now.